That Christians do not hate the members of the LGBTQ community, and my purpose is to enlighten the audience to the fact that Christians do not hate the members of that community. So in this day and age, equality is something that is hard fought for and discussed, and Christians believe that God created all human beings in his image, making all of us equal. That includes members of the LGBTQ community. Christians are also taught that all sin is equal. Yes, the Bible says that homosexuality is a sin. With that being said, that is on the same scale as a child disobeying their parents, all the way to murder. Granted, the consequences are different, just like anything else, like a speeding ticket. So like if you're going 20, you're going 30 in a 20 in a 20, it's different from going 50 in a 20. And so it goes the same way as in Christianity. And also Christians are taught that we're called to love our neighbors as ourselves. That's in Mark 12:31 in the New Testament of the Bible. This means that no matter what somebody says, does, likes, or wants, Christians are called to love them. So now that I have given some introduction into my debate, I will move into my first issue. So I'm going to go ahead and define and clarify some of the terms of my argument. Previously, I stated that human beings are created in God's image. For me to effectively communicate this topic, I'll define what it means to be created in God's image. To be created in the image of God, that means we are created to fulfill his purpose and vision for what he wanted this earth to be like. I also need to clarify why I say that some people may think Christians hate members of the LGBTQ community. Nobody is perfect, and that includes Christians. That means that they don't always live the way that God calls them to live. This means that some Christians think that they're justified in hating them. It is stated by the Southern Baptist Convention that Christians can and should minister to homosexuals in a kind yet firm manner. The church should never turn its back on homosexuals who are searching and seeking to heal the hearts within their lives. Now that the necessary terms have been clarified, I will define the limitations of my argument. This argument will include some key points as all human beings are created in the image of God, which makes us all equal. Christians are taught that God views all sin the same, but different sins do have different worldly consequences. Christians are taught to love their neighbors as themselves. This argument will not include topics that don't directly relate to the misconception between the LGBTQ community and Christians, and I will not allow talk of whether the Bible is true or not. So now that my limits are stated, I'm going to my major points. So God created all humans in his image. According to Rebecca McLaughlin, who wrote the 10 questions every teen should ask and answer about Christianity, says that none of us image God perfectly, as Jesus did, because he is holy and we are messed up with sin. But McLaughlin also says, so Jesus invented diversity by creating people with all sorts of different bodies and minds, but he also invented equality because we are equally made in God's image. When people look down on others because of their racial background or body type or mental ability or sexuality, they're going against God's plan and they're not listening to what the Bible calls us to do. So all that to say, discriminating or somebody who is a part of the LGBTQ community is going against what God teaches Christians in the first place. Christians are taught that all sin is equal in God's eyes because they all equally separate us from God. But different sins have different consequences, same as going, as I said, 10 over the speed limit versus going 40 over the speed limit. Billy Graham says in his article called Billy Graham's Answer to What is Sin? Are all sins equal in God's eyes? It is always difficult and dangerous to attempt to list sins according to their degree of seriousness. In one sense, all sins are equal in that they all separate us from God. He also says that at the same time, it seems obvious that some sins are worse than others in both motivation and effects, and should be judged accordingly. Stealing a loaf of bread is vastly different than exterminating 1 million people. Sins may also differ at their root. Christians are taught to love your neighbor as yourself, and Christians can and should minister to homosexuals in a kind yet firm manner, and the church should never turn its back on homosexuals who are searching and seeking to heal the hearts of their lives, says the article about the Southern Baptist Church, written by the Human Rights Convention. No, Christians don't agree with somebody being a part of the LGBT community, but that doesn't mean that Christians hate them. Christians are imperfect, just like the next person, and there are people who say they are Christians and discriminate or say hateful things or say they are going to hell. They are no better than the person that they are talking about. And now that I've presented my case, I'll conclude my argument, is that Christians do not hate the members of the LGBT community, and I have defined the necessary terminology. I have established the limits of my argument, and lastly, I discussed the major points to prove my argument. In the future, I urge you to think twice about Christians and their views on the LGBTQ community, and not jump to conclusions, and remember that they are humans too. And I pray that you will consider the things I've said today.